Friends, welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we look at movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magic, healing fishman magic. I'm your host, joined as always by my less than talkative maid and co-host,
Alex Dandino.
You broke the joke. You ruined the illusion. Oh, I forgot. Was that your 1920s tap dance breakaway?
Yeah, duh.
Okay, duh. Well, shame on me. All right, guys, before we dive into
asshole.
today's love affair, a little business. Please take a second and leave us a rating and review wherever you find the show, especially if that happens to be Apple Podcast app. Helps us out, guys. We appreciate it. Quick 5-star, quick sentence or two about why you love spending time with us. Thank you, guys. On that same note, we're on all the social media you're on. That's a great way for you guys to help us out, too. Share us with your friends, man. Share the show. Let your other movie-loving friends know that we're here. We thank you in advance. You can email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. Great way to get a hold of us. Let us know movies you'd like to hear covered on the show. New, old, theme for a month, guest host, anything like that. You guys let us know. We'll put it on the list. We've gotten some really good ones, so thank you guys in advance. Go to YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're not just beautiful voices. We're also beautiful humans in the flesh that you can watch on YouTube. Our channel is called Film Alchemist. You can see video versions of this podcast and other stuff we're cooking up over there. So get on it, guys. Thank you. All right. Enough business this February, the month of Amour. Yeah, interspecies erotica month here on Film Alchemist. It just sounds so gross. I think Kevin Smith ruined that phrase. I don't know. Maybe that phrase was ruined before. Inhuman love, inhuman romance.
Yeah, that's better. Inhuman romance.
Inhuman romance. Yeah, it sounds less gross, less seedy. All right, guys, we're starting the month off, right? So these are all movies where man or woman falls in love with a non-human entity. Today, one of my all-time favorite movies to ever win the Academy Award for Best Picture, The Shape of Water. Guillermo del Toro. Just bringing everything that I've always loved about him to absolute pitch-perfect fruition. Alex, walk me through your opening thoughts on The Shape of Water.
I also love this movie. It's also pretty rare on this pod that we actually discuss Best Picture winners. I think the last time we did it was. I think the only time we've ever done it is like Parasite.
Yeah, and to be fair, I am just an absolute full-on cult of Oscar. I love the Academy Awards. You not so much, so I don't tempt the fates. But I thought this one would be perfection.
Absolutely,
for us to talk
this
about.
is perfect for this month of Amour. I, like I said, love this movie. It is Guillermo del Toro doing everything he does best, which is make me feel weird about interspecies love, which is fine in this movie. Make me curious about things that I was not curious about before, and just in general, give me the whimsy that I was looking for, and what otherwise, and in the hands of another director, might just be sort of a little too Cronenberg-y for my taste for this kind of tale.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by movies, and if we're being really honest, I don't think there's an enormous list, right, of movies that you see and you're like, that movie had to be made by that director.
Yes.
No one else could have made this movie. I mean, you could have, but not to the level that he got it to, right? And this movie illustrates my favorite thing about Del Toro, right? He's pretty not infamous, but well-known, right? For his love of monsters and all things horror and this and that. What I like about Del Toro, though, is even if you watch the Hellboy movies, Devil's Backbone, Pan's Labyrinth, this and that, the thing I really love about Del Toro is his love for monsters comes through enormously, right? He doesn't look at the monster as an inherently evil destruction device, right? I think a lot of us like monster movies and we like creature features, but a lot of directors who work in this medium, they use them as weapons against us, right? What I love is that Del Toro takes real care, and the monsters are usually some kind of blank slate with which humans can project their worst and or best qualities off of. And I think this movie, he does that as charmingly as he's ever done. And I would also say I think this is probably the best actual cast of characters. Every character in this movie is so perfect. Every small character is just perfectly cast, amazingly acted. I really do. I mean, it feels like the confluence that he's been working towards, right? And I don't know that every director gets that movie, right? Where that was the peak of everything that I love about that guy. And it was just awesome. And to see him actually win an Academy Award, to see a movie like this win so many prizes, I thought was just phenomenal.
It was not expected.
Yeah,
either.
right? Well, I mean, immediately, because I was telling you, one of the things that pissed me off the most, I love this movie. Like, this is one of those, I'm like, this feels like it was made just for me movies. I love when you find that movie, and you're like, they know exactly what my little heart wants. And I was telling you, I used to watch Bill Maher back in the day, and he used to always use this as his, like, Hollywood's out of touch and stupid movie, right? Oh, the fish fucker movie. And it always bothered me that that's what people always just take away from this movie. And see, I'm the opposite of you. I never thought it was weird at all. I think it's just fucking awesome. And
yeah. Well, I think I think is kind of I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, that scene particularly is, in my opinion, very beautiful. Like, when I actually rewound and watched that scene again today when I was watching the movie, just because it is like, it transcends a lot of this. It transcends a lot to me, and it becomes much more. It's not even about romance. Like, it just feels very intimate, like two people who are. I don't know how to describe it properly, to be honest with you. Like, it is just this sort of beautiful, intimate moment that you see between two souls, almost.
Yes.
Like, it's pretty fascinating to me.
Yeah, souls with secret dick compartments. So, like, I get it. There are jokes to be made for sure.
Look,
Bill Maher should make better ones as a professional comedian.
Yeah, I actually think it's pretty low hanging fruit. I think Guillermo del Toro.
It is. Big ass egg.
Sorry, pun not intended. But I think Guillermo del Toro is a smart enough director to also know that that's what's going to happen. And, you don't create a creature, you don't create prosthetics and creatures like that and then do that in a movie and not expect to catch, like, something funny. That's just,
but yeah,
the way it is.
Honestly, it's just, I never thought it had a chance. I was like, this is by far the best movie of the year. And usually whatever movie I think that's the case for, it doesn't happen. And I was just like, everyone's going to just say it's the fish fucker movie. And when it pulled through, I was like, there is something to be said about, this gets back to what we talked about with Total Recall, right? The Seth Rogen quote. Audiences will let you go as far out as you want. And this movie proves that.
That year, which was the 90th Academy Awards, it was The Shape of Water, Call Me By Your Name, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
That's a fucking tough crowd.
That's a fucking... Actually, I'll say this. That year was the first year I had watched the Oscars in a long time, and it was like, all these movies were actually very good and deserved to be nominated for Oscars. I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah, right?
And, like, I was very surprised when The Shape of Water won. Pleasantly, of course, because I did enjoy The Shape of Water. But it was super fascinating to have movies like Call Me By Your Name, Darkest Hour, which is a biopic. Like, those are always the ones that end up getting the spot just because of the nature of what they're made about. And then Get Out won Best Screenplay. And I'm like, hang on. Things are very different this year. I think we're finally, like, getting over the fact that nobody wants to watch a movie about old white guys for, like, maybe 20 minutes. But that is what's so wonderful about The Shape of Water.
A,
and I think
The Post. Exhibit B, The Darkest Hour. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But that, I think, is what makes The Shape of Water so fascinating to me, is that everything about it is unexpected. It should not be it should be a weird, quirky little movie that we all talk about in hushed tones and maybe get a Criterion DVD of. What it is this beautiful, sweeping, romantic movie that is also this, like, sci-fi sort of genre thriller that does so much work at all times to just make you believe everything that's happening is happening. And look, this movie could be written off very quickly, but it's not, because everything about it feels real, and that is the power of this movie.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are probably screaming at their audio devices right now. Pan's Labyrinth was peak Del Toro. Sure, like, absolutely. That movie's amazing.
Of course.
I think
it's a wonderful movie.
I think what's different about Shape of Water for me is like you said, there is a fairy tale magic in this one, whereas Pan's Labyrinth is very punishing in how it uses its magic, and it uses the imagination of a child and this and that, and it's weaponized against us, right? It's the poisoning of magic in the world against this child, right? This one, right. I like that there's so much warmth and heart, right?
Yes,
and at
me
the
too.
core, there are monstrous acts and a monstrous man and this and that. I love the opening when we see she's just floating, right? She's floating up in the... And Richard Jenkins is giving his opening monologue, and he even mentions, right, the monster that tried to destroy it all. And if you watch Del Toro, you know that monster's going to be us.
Right.
And I love watching that rollout, right? What I think at the core of this movie, right, is I think this movie still works pretty well if that's not a fish person, right? I think the fish works so well because it's classic Del Toro. It's visual. They were just shots in this movie, right, that are just breathtaking moments of movie making. Like, I'll remember that moment. The scene where she sets the egg down and she has the record and she's eating and his hand comes up and grabs the egg and you cut back and the two of them are just like head to head enjoying a moment of peace in this fucking torture laboratory. You're just like, it's one of those things that you see in movies and you're just like, God, you rarely get transported like that, right?
Yeah.
But I think at the core what it is I think about the moments between neighbors, between her and Octavia Spencer. I mean, there are just moments of such profound human longing and joy that's to me what is the extra separator of this movie, right?
Right. I mean, that's what it is. Like, that I think is what makes Del Toro one of the more fascinating filmmakers of our time. Is just he makes these kinds of movies that should be big, like Hollywood, creature feature movies, but that's not what this is. And I think that's always the thing that gets lost on people who don't want to watch this kind of movie simply because it's about a fish guy. You're like, it's not about a fish guy. To be fair,
I liked it so much, I took my mother with me because she just wants to be a part of what I do and she loves movies. And I was like, I've had a couple swings and misses with Mom, right? Like, I took her to see Troll Jurgen and this, and you're like, these probably aren't right. But my mom, I think, still even mostly enjoyed this movie. I think she was kind of like, I could have done without the fish stick as well. But at the end of the day, I think this always comes back to, I think people understand that I think the thing this movie does well, right, is it puts all the characters in their own little fish bowls. I love the scene when she has the card, right? And she's pointing this out to the creature, right? Sally Hawkins. And she's pointing and she's like, I'm the person holding the fish bowl. You're the fish in the bowl. And it's like, I hate to break it to you. You guys are the fucking fish in the bowl. Like, you know, like, and I think that is kind of the cool image that pervades is there is a profound loneliness in all of these characters that as an audience member, I don't care if it's the fucking fish. I don't care that it's her with her egg timer in her bathtub. I want people in this movie to find moments of happiness because I love them and I feel sad for them constantly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is just about these these intermittent moments of happiness amidst terrifying shit. Like, things that are like things that are world-ending in a lot of cases, particularly in this movie. Like, it's interesting because this movie really should be an A-plot about Cold War era hysterics and the space race and all that kind of shit. That should be the A-plot of the movie. That should be the through line for the whole fucking thing. And that is the mastery of this movie. Is it's not even close to being that. What it is about about a misunderstood being and two misunderstood beings finding each other in the darkness. And that is like, that's the A-plot. That's the A-plot for a great romance movie. That's the A-plot for a romantic moment, for whimsy, for beauty in life itself. And I think that's what's so great is the background noise is all this awesome sci-fi, Cold War era hysteria that is just like sort of like keeping the plot moving forward. But what we're locked into, like you were saying, is these small moments, these really small, beautiful pieces of these people's lives. Like, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is Richard Jenkins' character Giles.
He's the fucking best. He's the
Okay,
absolute fucking
Can
best.
we take a minute
ever.
to talk about Richard Jenkins, who
I
might
fucking
be...
adore him so much in this movie.
There's never been an actor more important to movies than Richard Jenkins. I swear to God.
Oh, ever?
He's in
Okay,
everything.
now we're hyperbole, but I love Richard Jenkins too.
I'm really not, man. Like, he's in every movie I love, and he's just there. Like, he just shows up, man.
Right.
He shouldn't be as good as... He has no right to be... I mean, he does, obviously. He's a human being. He can do whatever he
fucking
wants.
amazing.
He has no right, though, to be as talented and wonderful as he is, and he's just as good in this movie as he is in... I mean... You know,
He's the
I'm sure
Amazon fish god of our old man character actors. I agree.
I'm sure the thing that everybody I'm sure everything everybody remembers him from now is Step Brothers, but he's like one of the all-time greatest dramatic actors. Like, one of my all-time favorite dramatic actors in movies.
But
neither here nor there.
But yeah, I mean, his role in this movie, again, this is what separates it to me, right? Because I think this and Pan's Labyrinth are a great double feature. I think it'd be hard to argue that those aren't the best Del Toro flicks, right?
Right.
I know some people that would, but I think I would have a pretty strong case to make for those two.
I think they would be wrong.
But again, there is something about sometimes I'm in the mood for unrelenting sadness and to abuse myself because humans are trash. And sometimes I want a little... I might feel that way, but I want to be reminded of magic. And Giles in this movie, right, the neighbor, is this... what should be this really sad, broken human being, right? He had the big job. He lost the job for being an alcoholic. And now we see him, and all he is, he's the guy who's still peddling a craft that's out of date, right? Mm-hmm. He's always flipping to TV. He always knows when the whimsical musical movie's on. His whole life is just living in these fucking moments of fantasy. Same with the guy at the pie store, right? Just anything to pull him out of his real life. The one thing he has is this beautiful bond with this neighbor lady. He's learned sign language. Their bond is so sweet and so endearing that, again, these two kind of sad, lonely, isolated people, that bridge they have with each other becomes so true and so deep very fast. And just watching him kind of explain to her, oh, this is the Bojangles dance, right? The movie constantly is dipping back and showing us classic cinema, right? The love of cinema. Just again, these people just finding anything to be happy about, right? And I think that's where this movie excels so much, right? Because the scene that will always stick out with me with Richard Jenkins, because his comedic beats are great, but the scene when he wants to get his job back, and she's like, you have to help me save this creature, right? They're going to vivisect my new, fish boyfriend. You got to help me. He's like, what are we? We're nothing, right? He's like, what? He's been so devalued by everyone. And the one person he loves is begging him for help, right? And so, I mean, this is like the whole movie, right? Is this moment when she's, when he looks at me, right? Oh, it's a he now, right? It's not a thing, it's a he. And when he looks at me, he doesn't realize how I'm broken. He doesn't realize what I'm lacking, right? And her and Richard Jenkins have a, tussle. Like, it looks like he's just done with her. He's like, don't ask me to inconvenience myself. And then he goes on this back-to-back, just two horrendous moments, right? He's not getting his job back. This guy that he seemingly has feelings with rebuffs him, right? The pie man that he's worked up, right? Fake accent pie man.
Huge racist.
Yeah, racist and rebuffs him, right? And, is also homophobic to him. So he's done eating the shitty pie. He comes back, and this is the moment when he knocks on the door and just opens it, and he's just like, whatever this thing is, it's your light in the darkness, and you need that. And what he's saying is, I fucking need that, right? And you're the only thing I have. So and his willingness to go out on a limb, right? I mean, it's beautiful. I love the interplay with those two in this film.
I mean, that's their two-hander's amazing. Again, Sally Hawkins is, for an actress who says practically nothing the entire movie, she is so fucking wonderful. I think Sally Hawkins is a fantastic actress regardless.
Agreed.
When she speaks in films. This is on another level, though, of like just the human emotion on her face. And again, being the one without a voice in this movie and to let other people do their thing, like between her and Octavia Spencer, her and Richard Jenkins, and even her and, Michael Shannon, who we'll get to. like, she is unbelievably incredible at getting out of people's way and then also stepping back in and taking control of a scene. Like, there's just stuff that you can't, there's stuff that is just preternatural about actors that I wish I had. I think a lot of actors who are working wish they had it, but there's just things about some of these people that are just undeniable. And Sally Hawkins has that in this movie, and it's truly wonderful to watch. And it's gut-wrenching.
And it's weird because by the end of the film, her actions almost become the strongest voice in the room. Right?
Oh, totally.
Like, you see her turn where by listening to the way other people talk to her, you're filling in a lot of what she means and what she says. And the scene that always leaps out to me is when she's giving it right back to Michael Shannon, who just terrorized her in the scene before. Like, I like a woman that don't talk. Right? And he's just being a sack of shit. And she, all of a sudden is like, oh, was he doing something trivial? And she starts spelling out, fuck you.
Fuck you, yeah.
Because for a moment, she's watching him finally be scared the way he scares everyone else. And she fucking loves it. The power in that scene, right?
Yeah.
Really, to me, the Sally Hawkins beat that I think everyone takes away from this movie, right, is because at the start of the movie, she seems so small and mousy, and you're almost afraid for her. You're like, this seems like a rough world, right? Like, she's in this tough facility, and there's a fucking monster and whatever. But by the end, when her and the creature flood the room, right, they're going to flood the pond, all kinds of flooding's about to go down in this bathroom. And when Richard Jenkins opens the door and that scene of her just holding the creature, right? And just the look on her face of just absolutely a person being so complete, right? Like, her one look just says, strength, I've conquered, I know love. I mean, it's just that look. Like you said, there's just something undeniable, and it's magic, and you can't pin it down, but her eye just looking at Richard Jenkins, and Richard Jenkins just being like, and closing the door because he knows he's witnessed something profound and beautiful and and moving.
Totally. Oh no, it's by far the most mesmerizing moment in the movie to me. The look on her face is the movie itself. Like, everything about what happens in that moment is the source of power this movie has. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating, and it's absolutely wonderful. The movie is just such a fascinating anomaly of, and not only that, like, this like reversal of what I think normally we would like. I was reading today that when Guillermo del Toro was pitching to Michael Shannon, he's mentioned to Michael Shannon, he's like, if this movie was made in the 50s, you would be the hero of the story.
Yeah. And
that struck me as really fascinating because I never thought of Strickland like that in this movie, obviously. Like, he's the villain. He's supposed to be.
No.
But then I started thinking more about it. I'm like, he absolutely 1,000% believes he's doing the right thing the whole time, which is what makes him a great villain. But more to the point, like, the way it's written, he has so many irredeemable moments in a lot of ways that are so fascinating because they're injected with, because there's the 50s version, or I guess 62, like, there's the 60s version of this guy who is the hero of the story. And then the 2017 version with all of the injected real world moments, like, it is a completely different movie, and it's a completely fascinating examination of how we never saw another side of those heroes of those 60s sci-fi films. Like, this is exactly what I was talking about with the Cold War era layer on the back end. When we see any of that, it's so real. It's the real world creeping in and, like, fucking with this whimsy beyond comprehension for no reason other than to ruin it. It's absolutely masterful storytelling.
Yeah, and this is the Creature from the Black Lagoon, right? Which this obviously is heavily influenced by. That's a story of, they find a fossil. They're like, hey, we should go back and find where this fossilized gill-man hand came from.
Right.
They get trapped in a lagoon, by the creature. And he's just like, wow, look at that beautiful thing. What is that creature, right? He doesn't maim the lady. He doesn't murder her. And then guys come down and start spraying fucking poison gases and shooting harpoons at him. And he fights back. And they put him in a cage. And he burns their boat. And at the end of the day, it's just like, I'm fascinated by it. It's the King Kong, right? 'Twas beauty killed the beast. And it's weird because those guys are like, oh my God, this fucking sack of shit creature's trying to take my side piece and burn my boat. It's like, dude, you rolled into his house and started chucking dynamite and shit so you could bring him back. And again, you're just watching like, oh, I'm glad they defeated the monster so the girl in the one piece, can go back to swimming in someone else's home. Like, it's insane if you think about it like that, right? But we're so trained. And again, this gets back to the Del Toro lens, which is important. We're trained, that's not us. That's other. That's different. Hate that. Scare that. Destroy that. And that is perfect for this movie with the Cold War as the backdrop, right? Because we see this interlude between them and they don't know what the fuck this thing is. But they're like, the Russians want it. That's good enough for us. Let's kill it and move on. And the Russians even say, Russians don't need to learn. Russians need Americans not to learn. Pig dog.
Right.
And you're like, so you get where they're at, right? They're just others. They're inhuman, right? Like you said, this is an earth-shattering revelation. There's an Amazonian fish god with all these healing powers that they don't even discover in the lab. That's what would be really useful to us. They don't care about that. They're talking about scuba lungs and whatever the fuck. All it is it's different. And they want it, so we need it, and we should destroy it so they can't have it. And that game of back and forth is what monster movies have always been. And so, yeah, Strickland, his journey through being the American ideal man is masterfully laid out in this film. Yes.
I love this movie.
I feel like that's me too. It's one of those rare movies I watch where it's like, I am just absolutely ferried away into this beautiful, fable. I fucking adore this movie. But
like, I took my wife to see this movie, and it was like one of those things, like we both wanted to see it because we both love Guillermo del Toro, but like my wife's a big into vintage clothing, so she really wanted to go because it's 60s, it's all retro. It's like that style is very relevant to her, and she likes all that kind of stuff. So obviously I'm going because I'm a fucking nerd and I like Guillermo del Toro movies. And then we step into this movie and like all the things we came in with the preconceived notions of what we wanted to see. And this is, again, like they all melt away. Mm-hmm. And we're both like holding each other's hands, watching these people just fall in love. And then like that scene, the cut scene where she has the fantasy where she does the dance number. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, in any other movie that is even remotely similar to this, that rings so untrue. And in this one, it felt so wonderful and uplifting.
You know why?
And beautiful.
You know why?
Why?
Because at the start of her own fantasy, we watch her trying to find her voice. She's trying to imagine what her voice would sound like to launch into the number, right? That I'll never be able to tell you how much I love you, whatever the song is, right? You'll never know. Watching her try to find her voice for that 30 seconds at the start, that meek voice before she erupts out into full-on fantasy, watching her travel that road, that's what makes it so earnest.
It's just beautiful, man.
Well, it's weird that that's the fantasy in the movie as she's sitting there with this fish boyfriend, and but that's what I mean. Who else can get away with this shit? That's the crazy thing.
That's the fantasy in the movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Wait, this is the strange thing, too, right? Because this is what I was going to say about Strickland, right? Every character in this movie's entire life is fantasy, right? It's all so Octavia Spencer has this fantasy marriage to Brewster, right? He's this mythological fucking lazy cycloptic beast, right? That she just hates, and she's like, he's terrible, she's terrible. When we finally see him, we're like, oh, he's just like a normal dude, right? Not doing a great job at being a husband. But we listen to her spin these yarns about Brewster, right? He becomes this mythical creature, right? And then, Sally Hawkins obviously has all her fantasies and routines with the fish. And then, the Russian doctor, obviously. Everyone has these little fantasies, right? To where by the end of the movie, her and the fish are the realest thing that we see, which is strange. Because Strickland's journey through the American man, right? Where his son, hey, Poppy, do you think we'll have jetpacks? Of course we will, boy. This is America. Right? And then he's just pounding his wife out, thinking of Sally Hawkins. That scene, there's so many small moments of menace with him. When she's like, honey, you're bleeding. And he's like, shh, 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 shh. and he's just obviously thinking about a woman who can't speak back to him, which again speaks to, the kind of man archetypes of that time. He's the man of the future in his car. They wave at him. It's, the scene that nailed it home for me, though, was when his wife brought in the green Jello that Richard Jenkins had been drawing. And he's like, how much fucking happier can they be? And when you see him unhappy as the Jello's brought in, I was like, what a fucking brilliant visual throwback.
The one that always, again, we haven't talked yet about like the special effects work in this movie and like the highly underrated and probably most important thing, which is Doug Jones, who's a Ball State alum and also just
Ball State chirp chirp.
Chirp chirp. But the scene where he's in his car and he literally like sniffs his dying fingers. I remember being like, that might be the grossest thing in this movie.
Like there's all that.
Like there's nothing gross. There's nothing more disgusting in this movie than watching this guy. And I liked that it's this really fascinating, obvious but really fascinating metaphor for his character himself, which is just he's holding on so close. He has to keep this as it was. He doesn't want to be changed by this experience. He wants to be the same person he was at the very beginning. So for him to like literally hold on to the last second and then have to like rip his own fingers off.
Oh. See, I think that scene is more about he's just done with the facade.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
He's not being the American man now. He's here to destroy.
Because he knows that once he
realizes the help, as he calls her, right? That he's been terrorizing, that she stole this fish, right?
Right.
That a woman did this underneath of him, right? A woman that he desires, right? That his whole social order is toppled, right? He's not at all struck by the magic of this creature, right? Or the knowledge that he's the only person touched by the creature who isn't healed or made better. He's the one that starts rotting.
Right.
And there's nothing about that except for I think he's just mad. Yeah. That they took, because the general pretty much tells him, he's like, have the decency to not fuck up or you'll be unmade, you'll be unborn, right? And I think in a way in that moment when the general says that, he's already made him unborn. He's already unmade him. And I think now he gets in that mantra place, right? Like, I deliver. But he doesn't care why he delivers. He's not thinking about what he's just out for menace.
Right.
And I think when he rips the fingers off, it's just like, oh, finally, I can just get about my
finally
business.
I can be myself, which is this menacing shithead.
Yeah.
For the last, 5 minutes of the movie.
Oh,
but
the worst.
All right. I want to talk about Doug Jones.
That Doug Jones brings the action with every role he takes. Yeah. Guaranteed. From
Billy Bones up to now. He is one of the all-time great creature actors. He is a Boris Karloff of his time, so to speak. He's been in many movies that you might not have even known he was in simply because this is what he does. But this, I think, might have been his most... This is probably the most featured he's been in a movie ever.
Yeah, well, I mean, the fact that... in the way that Del Toro does this, right? That he allows the monster to be this romantic lead, right? This aspirational male figure in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen a lot for the monster. And so then that leads you to think, by proxy, that doesn't happen a lot for the guy who acts as the monster. Right? So he gets his moment. And if you watch his body language when him and Sally Hawkins are having their moment, like one of my favorite moments in the movie is when Dimitri creeps out from the shadows and he sees them signing as she's doing the little tap dance erotica show for him outside of his fish tube. And they start signing, this and that. And he sees that they have this extra special bond, right? This magic that is, we're following through the whole film. He sees it for the first time, and this undercover Russian spy, his fantasy is really hard to watch in the movie too, because his is kind of the inverse trajectory of Michael Shannon, right? Where he is supposed to be the man of the state. You get the sense that Michael Shannon would love being in the Soviet Union side, right? Like you just get the sense like I'd just be a man who crushes for the system. and I'll be
Right.
stoked about that. Whereas Michael Shannon at least has the knowledge, like, I'm a scientist, man, and for the good of humanity, and this is magic. There's something extra happening. And to see that she's a part of that, his internal shift to becoming a good man and getting to tell someone his real name are just great. But the moment when he sees that, I think that's where the Doug Jones-ness comes out, right? Is the way that through just a gentle caress, or the way he reacts when she touches his chest, or the way he goes to embrace her, right? That has to look like alien to us, but be universally recognizable as a moment of tenderness. I mean, I think it's one of those things. I don't think any of us will ever fully appreciate how good he is, if that makes sense.
No, I don't think so either. And I think it'll take a very long time, I think, for any of us to be able to understand the depth with which he takes characters.
Yeah.
Because he knows that he knows that while his face is not being seen, he knows that everything else he has to be so much more than everyone else. If his face can't be seen, he has to make that real for us. Like, how many movies have we watched where people are just going to sit in a rubber suit and not make an effort? Like, you're going to motion back and forth. Like, the Doug Jones performance, anytime he's in one of these situations, where I think the only time I've ever seen him not in a costume or not in some form of makeup might have been that movie. It was an indie that they shot in Muncie with the Ball State crew. That might be the only time I've ever seen him in a dramatic role without any makeup on at all. But to me, that is the artistry of Doug Jones, and that's the thing that will make all of us in like 10 or 20 years look back at all the movies he's done and be like, oh my God, how did we just totally overlook this? Like, this guy is lifetime achievement material,
Well,
this is a person who's brought things to life.
This one, right, where
totally
the monster facade, right? Because I do think sometimes playing in a mask or this and that can help an actor, right? 'Cause you have something to build you into this fantasy, right? And it's funny that he already played Abe Sapien, right? And got his voice replaced by Dr. Niles Crane, who, glorious dulcet tones. But I know I read he talked about how much that hurt him. He's like, I can do this performance. And they're like, no, we just want your lanky body. And then it happened to him with Silver Surfer. And then he got to be Abe Sapien, and do the voice in Hellboy 2, and that was
Which he was great.
But this is the movie where they said, so you have all this creature makeup and this and that, but it almost becomes an absolute hindrance to the performance you would naturally give as a man falling in love with a woman, right? Now you are falling in love with a woman, but it'd be like me, like a sentient candle, right? A Gwyneth Paltrow candle explodes in your house, and in the fiery wreckage, you're like, how am I going to love and have intercourse with the fiery wax of that candle?
Right.
Act. And it's like, wow, that's a lot to process. That's what he's doing. This is something, I mean, that is, I guess that's not all the way true, because in the Amazon, he's come across other humans. I don't know if he's just out there slinging fish sticks all over the place. But watching, and that's something Doug Jones has to build into the character, right? Does this guy have like a fish tender? I don't know. But watching him find those intimate moments of tenderness across species lines, that is, I mean, that's hard to do. That's really hard to do. And especially when you're in all that shit.
I mean, again, and you're right, there is credit to being able to hide your face and really invest yourself in the character, but there is just something otherworldly about being able to completely envelop in something like that and become that person. It's inspiring and it's amazing, and I think it leads us to, we have to talk about this fish stick
It's hard
scene.
because, I think so little of us fully understand what he does. We just know it's magic. It's hard to even have the vocabulary to praise him properly.
Right. I mean,
doing.
Again, that's like, I mean, that's a great way to put it.
I believe there's an actual fish man, and that this woman's
we
in
don't
love with him, and I
possess
buy it all the way.
I don't possess the brain capacity to know what he's doing, but I know that he's doing it very well. That is how I know.
Yes.
But that also leads us again, like I said, to the fish dick scene, which we must discuss.
This is the weird thing, because I know, again, I don't think my mom was in love with the idea of, like, she's like, oh, I made it this far in my life without pondering fish erotica. Like, I could have made it the rest of the way. But
what a fool.
Again, I love it, man. I love it in this movie.
I do too.
Because I think what it does is it comes from a place of, again, we see the real monster of this movie. When you see Michael Shannon and you see his lovemaking with his wife, right?
Jeez.
All of a sudden, these things that seem normal to us, when you start seeing her, again, I think that gets back to the Richard Jenkins point too. You just want her to be happy. And you trust that what she's feeling is real. Right. And to me, it's one of those things I remember when I first saw the movie being like, oh, wow, Sally Hawkins is like butt naked and doing full frontal in the first scene.
Yeah.
Doing a little self time in the bathtub.
A little me time,
like,
yes.
That's a weird thing to add. Okay. And I think what it does is it sets this tone of having to only be loved by yourself, right? That when we see later her and this creature, for me, it feels so beautiful. It never came off as weird or exploitative or hard to watch for me.
No, it didn't. Same here. Like, I mean, like, we walked out of the theater and I was just like, is it just me or was that just like beautiful? Like, it's not like, I wasn't like, what are the mechanics? Because I mean, like the scene after, like her and Octavia Spencer are talking, and Octavia Spencer's hilarious. She does all the work we don't want to have to do.
We got to take a time out. We never talked again about her. Just one of those actresses that just does not get the fucking absolute landslide of credit she deserves, and she is not fucking perfection in this movie.
She is. She's absolutely wonderful. I'm sorry, we did not talk enough about Octavia Spencer being like the world's greatest interpreter. And not only like that, but also just like owning those scenes. I fucking love that scene with her and her husband at the end. Like, she's so fucking awesome. Oh my God.
Yeah.
She's
fucking great. We're kind of jumping around, but anyways, back to the fish tank. I just wanted to plant the flag and say I fucking adore Octavia Spencer too.
Yes.
All right, fish sticks, go.
But she does such a good job of doing the work for us. And again, this is because Octavia Spencer's amazing. She's like, I know for a fact, like the way that it's written, Guillermo del Toro is smart enough to know, like, all right, I just presented a very weird scenario to the audience. How do I make it real for everyone? And it's like, I give Zelda the lines that anyone would ask the night after someone had sex with somebody. Like, it's this, like, Sex in the City morning brunch routine where she's like, so how does it work? Oh, tell me more. Like, that whole bit.
It's the most human thing, right? There's this amazing discovery
absolutely
creature, and it's like, how do we fuck it?
How do we fuck it?
It's not as romantic as the movie presents it, the way I just phrased it, but it is.
Right.
It would be the first thing
it's that Clerks 2 bit. It's that Clerks. There he goes. Homeboy fucked a Martian.
Yeah, right.
Same thing.
I mean, yeah. But again, I don't think he needs to. And I think maybe there's a part of it where the opening masturbation scenes are to set a tone of being up close with her and intimate, right? Because that first scene, you're kind of like, oh, damn, she's just going for it in the bathtub. And it feels kind of predatory and voyeuristic that we're in there watching it. She can't hear, so it kind of has that movie Hush vibe, right? You're like, we shouldn't be in here, man. We got to get out of here. Right. And also, I think there is just, most audiences are trained to be weird about women owning their sexuality like this sometimes. So I think those moments set us up for that it's her safe, intimate spot, right? So I think that's a calculate. Because honestly, if you would have asked me Vegas odds over under that Sally Hawkins would be naked in this movie, it would be low.
But
again, I think it's not in a sexual exploitative way. It's to just progress this idea of the romance. And I think
Yeah.
by both of them being naked together, it's showing the closing of the gap in form, right? That they're not
Right.
so far and weird and different. I don't know, man. I think people get really hung up on it, and I get it. It's funny to make jokes about and shit.
Oh yeah. I mean,
And
look,
it's certainly
I'm not
not the
saying
kind
it's
of
not.
movie you think you're gonna see, but
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not worthy of some sort of ribbing, but if you can't see the beauty of it, and you kind of can't see like what it means for thematically what's happening in the movie, then I don't know. You're not. I don't think you're watching the movie.
well, I would like to know who watches that movie, right? And they roll right through Michael Shannon just aggressively pounding his wife out while asking her to be quiet, all because she
Right.
has a hand soap fetish. And then next thing you know, they see like those two embrace, and they're like, "That's it. That's the line. Get the
Yeah.
sedan. We're going home." Right? Like
There's so
that
many movies we've watched.
I would be so baffled. Yeah, I would be so baffled that you could see the Michael Shannon lovemaking and think that's okay and normal, and not the other. That seems strange to me.
Well, I mean, again, that's what this movie is about. Really, is the other that we don't realize. The other of what love is. Like, love is this unexplainable thing. You don't know where it's going to come from. You don't know who's going to provide you with that sort of feeling. So I think that's what's fascinating about this movie. And overall, what's the most powerful is that, again, the backdrop with...
I just thought of one thing, though. Can I run this by you?
Sure.
Do you think perhaps that people were a little more weirded out about her fucking the creature after we saw the creature eat the cat? Right? Because he's kind of played as this, like, sentient, nice boyfriend type. I think the eating the cat reminds us of the feral wild animal side. And maybe that helped build the maybe if he doesn't mow that cat, we're just like, he's just a good misunderstood boyfriend in a tub.
Right. Yeah, I mean...
And granted, I don't like cats hardly at all.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, do you think that is reminding people that it is...
I guess...
a taboo in our society?
Sure. I'd say that's probably a moment to say, like, maybe it's taboo at the moment.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a
like,
tough one.
Oh, man.
I don't know.
I was
There's
totally
also
down
like,
for you guys.
There's also like serious wordplay here that's like low hanging fruit that I cannot get into. But I'm not taking the bait, Griffey. I'm not. You asked a question before we started the pod, and I realized I don't have an answer for it. And I want to ask you, because I don't know if you've thought about this. I really haven't. The title of the movie, The Shape of Water. You said, I don't know what that means. And I got to be honest, I don't either. So I think we need to explore that. Like, what is that?
Yeah, I think I thought I knew what it was because I've seen this movie multiple times now.
What did you think it was?
I think I assumed it was the name of the poem at the end. And that might be, but even then it should mean something, right? And I think at the end the poem starts to discuss... I think the theme of the poem at the end, I don't remember the exact wordings, right? But essentially it is when you love someone so much that every atom of the world becomes them, right? And that's the great, elemental ability of water is it can change and take form. And so I think the shape of water, right, is referring to the way that when you find someone and you can be completely at ease with them, right? Because I never loved this in movies, right? The whole idea that we'll find a soulmate and it makes life perfect. I think it's a weird thing that humans do where we're like, someone else can fix all the empty holes in our soul. It's like, no, they can't. They can make it more tolerable, right? But I think this movie is saying something like, when you're in the presence of such a romance, right? That you are totally enveloped and you are totally filled with happiness, right? In a world that's kind of cold and sad. I don't know that that's a great answer for your question, but that's kind of what I mean.
I don't think it's any worse than other answers that one might find. I mean, ultimately, I feel like The Shape of Water. I think that's a great way to put it, though. Like the atoms in the universe take the shape of what you love. I like that notion. I like the concept
Yeah.
of the all.
And then your
I
heart
like the
becomes
concept.
cold and sad, and you're rock hard and immutable like Michael Shannon.
I like the concept of. To me, like the shape of water is about the envelopment of what love is. So when you find it, that's what the shape of water is. It overtakes you. So nothing else matters. I like that. That would be probably my way of describing it. So I don't know.
I was gonna ask you this too. Somehow, in all the times of me watching this film, I had totally spaced the fact that they gave her what feels like it could be construed as a mythical origin story, right? That she is found by people near an orphanage. She's found by the river with these marks on her neck that they assume are wounds that severed her vocal cord, right? I had totally spaced the thought that this feels like a Little Mermaid setup almost, right? Weirdly enough, I don't know how that never fucking clicked with me. The Little Mermaid parallel, right? That she could be, and maybe that's why people are so drawn to her, is she is also a mythical creature.
I mean, I think that's
I gotta say,
completely
if
plausible.
she is, I don't know that I love that as much.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's a fairy tale no matter what. So I am willing to sit here. I'm just willing to sit there and accept whatever reality Guillermo del Toro puts forth. So to me,
sure,
that is what I think. But that is what I think I like the most about it, is like, that's the story we hear. The story could be very plain, or the story could be very fanciful, but like,
true.
That is why I think that's why I think it works so well, because it is of the ilk of fairy tales. So of course she should have some sort of fairy tale origin. And a lot of times in fairy tales, you often have characters who wake up not realizing who they are. That's part of the story. That's part of the play of a great fairy tale. So to me, for Sally Hawkins' character to not know who she is, only to find that at the end, like when her true self is revealed, when her gills open up, so to speak.
Yeah.
That to me actually is quite beautiful. It's another great It's another great play on the fairy tale aspect of what Del Toro's doing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a lovely moment. I remember the first time seeing the movie and being like, how the fuck did I not know that was coming? That's so good. But there's a part of it, I actually, I think I've always thought of the movie as she knew cruelty so young, right? That she is perfectly placed as a human who has suffered, right? To understand the value of making a connection with her shut-in neighbor, right? Who's a troubled man himself, right?
Right.
Or, her friendship with Octavia Spencer and, cherishing that. And that when she sees this monster, that just by the way it looks at her, she knows it's not a monster because she's experienced, human monsters before. So I think that always really worked for me. And the ending becomes this kind of choose your own adventure moment, right? Do you think that she's brought in there and healed and that she was a fish all along? And now they'll live happy. Because that's what Richard Jenkins says. He's like, can I tell you they lived happily ever after? I like to believe they did. Right. I've always thought you could believe at the end that maybe he's just doing an Edgar, right? From Men in Black. He's like, it's a long trip. Gonna need a snack. Right? Like, she's done. Who cares? Like, I got to get back to my Amazonian fish tender. I don't know.
I guess you could say that.
Yeah, like there's a part of the movie that you don't know that what happens under there is real. That could be, because just as Richard Jenkins is narrating the opening, right, of Sally Hawkins floating in her own apartment, right? Maybe this is Richard Jenkins recollecting some of that. And as
maybe
an
this
artist,
is Richard
he's adding
Jenkins'
some romantic flourishes to it,
Perhaps this is Richard Jenkins' fairy tale all along. Maybe this isn't even real.
But I think that's the thing, though, right? Is I love the fairy tale elements of this, but the thought that she was some kind of stranded gill person to begin with, and she's just going back home, does not work as well for me. But I think that is something they build in with Richard Jenkins' dialogue is, I can't tell you what happens. I tell you what I want to believe. And we have to do that as an audience.
Right, and I think that in and of itself is what great that in and of itself is what great stories come from. It's not necessarily there's the spotlight story, which is all the facts and they're all laid out for you there, or there's or there's some element of whimsy. There's a fantasy to behold. There's something to really aspire to because it's beautiful, not because it's truthful.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way I always think of this movie, right, is first off, I just can't believe it exists in this form, right? Just this beautiful romantic tale with so much baggage that feels like it would not have gotten made, right? The creature from the Black Lagoon and this lady tap dancing and falling in love above an old theater, and it just feels impossible, right? And whether it's just Sally Hawkins just dominating, or Richard Jenkins just making me want to give him a hug, or Michael Shannon monologuing and, you know, ripping his fucking fingers off, there's just not a moment or frame in this movie where I'm just not ecstatic that it exists. And it's one of those experiences that you just don't get with a lot of movies. And again, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I'm fairly cynical by nature, and I tend to drift towards darker movies that are, you know, examining in a little more harsh tone, something like a Pan's Labyrinth. Right. And this one it's one of those experiences where I'm like, it's just pure cinematic joy for me. Every frame. I don't know. It's weird. I feel like, I don't know if we've been very insightful or whatever. I feel like I could just for like an hour just be like, that was awesome. That was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing about this movie is I don't think either of us can necessarily say we've been insightful. I mean, sure we could, I guess, but
I mean, I will.
It's one of those things where like I don't feel like I don't think I need to posture or theorize about this movie, because what I would say is just watch this. Watch this and feel the love and feel how beautiful this story is about people who find each other. I mean, not people, I guess, but souls that find one another.
I like the way you said that. Souls
that find one another.
Yeah. Well done. Well done to everyone involved. An absolute masterclass across the board. That's it for The Shape of Water. Hit us up by email or on socials. What's the body count for the fish man? How long is this guy, like 500 years old? How long has this been going down? Is this a Highlander romance? I don't know. Although Connor McLeod was also slinging swords. Let us know. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you find the show. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Film Alchemist. Email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. Find us on your socials. We'll be back next week. It's Man Meets Machine in the bedroom. The movie Her. Love that one too. Can't wait to get to it. Again, we have some cool new stuff coming. We'll have a couple Tuesday episodes that we'll let you know about when we know. Until then, for the Film Alchemist, I'm Josh Griffey.
I'm Alex Dandino.